So in this video, we are going to discuss about how an application works. See, if you consider any application architecture is going to be the constant one. And remember, when I'm saying architecture, I'm not discussing about complex system designs and also the complex scenarios that works behind it. I'm just going to describe how an application works. An outline, you can consider this like an outline, and we are not going in depth of this particular concept, but an outline. So how an application works. So this is what every developer must know. It doesn't matter what kind of developer you are. If you don't know how an application works, you are not going to be a developer at all. So let's understand how it's going to work. Then we can actually work upon it. So the first thing is every application is going to have two parts. So the first part is user interface. So what is an user interface? This is where client can interact. So what client can do? So client will interact with our application through this. So you can actually call this as a user interface. But when it comes to the technology side, you are going to call this as a front end. So all the front end technologies will help us to develop this user interface. So what are front end technologies? If you are looking for a backend, or if you are looking for a web application, so front end technologies in web application is HTML, CSS, JavaScript, React, Angular, so on. And when it comes to mobile applications, you are having some applications like Flutter. So for both Android and Mac OS, and you are having Android for this. So likewise, React Native, you are having all of them for mobile application, and for our web applications, we are having HTML, CSS, React, Angular, and JavaScript. So these are all the front-end technologies which are used to develop user interface. And when it comes to the second part, we are having the server. So what is a server? Server basically hosts the business logic. So what it does, it is going to have the business logic, and what the business logic will do. So server is responsible to accept a request and to send a response. And when we are saying about response, it is going to send the data, and also it is going to receive the data. So here, the request processing, in simple terms, the data processing will always taken care by the backend. So this business logic, this is also called as backend. And we are having a lot of different backend technologies. But yes, when it comes to the backend part, let's discuss about an enterprise level. So whenever you are going for an enterprise level, our go-to option is Java. Why we are going for Java? Because Java is not just an ordinary programming language. It's a legend. It's a legend in programming languages. Yes, right now the Python is booming. That's what you are all seeing right now. But if you ask me something, Python is there even before Java existed in the programming world. But still, Python didn't get the enough recognition. Here, I'm not criticizing it. I'm just stating the level of Java. If someone is thinking Java is going to die, just remember it is not going to. It will never die. Why? Because Java has survived a lot of times. And it is going to survive right now as well because of their open AI introduction. So they have integrated AI in Java as well, not only in Python. But Python is more preferable because it supports a different ecosystem. But yes, when you are going for an enterprise applications, we will go with Java, or else you can even select Python. You are having JavaScript, which is nothing but Node.js. You are having a different programming languages, which can act as a backend programming language. And the question here is, it is just helps us to process the data, right? Again, it is not going to store the data. Someone has to store the data, right? This is where we are having the database. So what are we having here? We are having the database to store the data. And for the database, we are having two parts. So the first part is SQL, and the second part is NoSQL. So the only difference between the SQL and the NoSQL is simple. One stores the data in an objects in form of an objects, and the second one stores the data in form of tables. And here the SQL stores the data in form of tables, and this is the most common one that you can learn easily. And when it comes to NoSQL, it stores the data in form of an object. So this is the only difference between these two, SQL and NoSQL. And if you ask me how really an application works, so the moment when this, imagine this as your user interface and this as your server. Okay, now just look at this. So the moment when I hit a request, so the request is going to go through my internet to the server, because server is going to be in some other location, like it might be in Mumbai, it might be in Chennai, or it might be in US, UK, or any other country. We don't know, right? So the server is going to be placed somewhere which is not going to be present physically. So we need internet connection to communicate with that. So whenever we need some data, we always send a request. What we do, we always send a request to the server, and the server will always send a response to us. Now, the request will always accepted by the business logic, and here it will communicate with the database directly to get the data and to store the data. So this is how they both can communicate with each other. This is how an application works. So this is a simple architecture or a simple application one. We usually call this as MVC, Model View Controller. And yes, we are not going in depth of it. So when we are discussing about the Java frameworks, Springboard, we are going to discuss about this architecture in detail. But right now, this is how a small application works. So first, let's understand what exactly a Java is. So if you ask me what is a Java, we all know that Java is a programming language, right? So we all know this. We always answer the same question whenever we get this question, what is a Java? We always say Java is a programming language. But wait a second. So what exactly a programming language? See, without understanding what is a programming language, so what is the meaning of it? So why we are learning this Java in the first place? So in order to understand Java, we have to understand the programming language. So we are just going to time travel a little bit towards the 19th century. And there we are going to be in an era where we don't have any systems. So at that time, how do you think the data is getting stored, right? So I've been very clear, right? We have to store the data. So I need to handle something. So how can a person can handle the data here? So he has to handle the data, right? So that's where what he is going to do is he is going to write all the data inside a book, and he has to carry it wherever he needs to go. That's what basically it does. But there is a problem with this. The book is limited. Only one person can write at a time. Even if two persons tries to write inside a book, it is not enough for us to maintain it for a very long time. So when it comes to a time frame side and also for the working side, it is going to be a lot of burden for us. Why? We have to spend money on this book, and we have to spend money on the person, and also we have to spend money on while we are carrying this. So we need to have a separate room for this books to be stored. So then only we need a certain rack. Imagine if you are a business owner, then you have to keep a lots of account books inside a rack. And obviously it is not easy for us to do this. That's where, so what we got is we got our first system. So they introduced something. So they said this is a supercomputer. It can do all your mathematical works and everything. But there is a problem here. So what is the problem? See, this is a system, right? So this is a machine. It can do all our tasks. But the problem is we have to communicate with this. So we in order to communicate, we are having keyboard and we are having mouse. That is not a problem. But how can a human can communicate with this, right? So I have to send some instructions, right? So I have to pass some instructions. But the problem is, how can it understand my instructions? You might think, how can it is? How can my system, or how can a system can understand human? Right. So in order to make it understand, we need a language. So what do we need here? We need a language. So usually when there are two humans, if they want to communicate, they always use human language. So that is, I'm going to have a certain language, English, and he is going to communicate with me in his own language, or somewhere or the other we are going to use English right now to communicate with each other, right? So this English, it is helping us to communicate with another person. But the problem here is not this. This is the problem. So system is having a language of binary language. So what is a binary language? See, binary language means you are going to have only 0 and 1 as a language. If it wants to talk something, it is going to say something like this: 0 0 1 0 0 0 1 1 0, something like this. So as a humans, we can only understand our language, which is, let's, for an example, let's say it has an English. I can understand only English. I cannot understand any other language. See, all of a sudden it is speaking with me in numbers. How can I speak it back? As a humans, it is really disadvantage for us. Why? According to the human brain, we cannot store numbers. We don't have that much of capability to store the numbers. So the capability for a human being is to store alphabets. So that is the reason why we are having contacts in our phone, right? If we are able to remember the numbers, then why should we even need a contact? Right? The contact application is there so that we can save a number with a name so that we can remember the name, not the number. Even right now, if you ask me something about my phone number, I even have to double check myself. So at that time, if I want to communicate with the system, in order to pass instructions, I have to pass it through binary numbers. So here it created a barrier between the human and also the system. So the barrier is the language. Again, the language is the only barrier here. So whenever there is a barrier, we always came up with the solutions. So what is the solution over there? So we introduce a translator here. So what does this translator will do? So whatever we are speaking to it in our language will be converted to zeros and ones to the system. So what system can do? System can perform its operation and it can actually send the response in zeros and ones. Again, the translator is going to translate this thing in alphabets. Right. I hope you understand right now, right? So the translator is our programming language. And here, this is why we are having a programming language to communicate with the system. So why do we have to communicate? Simple. We have to perform a lot of tasks like adding a number or performing a mathematical calculation or else trying to save a file or trying to write something inside a file. Everything is a calculation for us. So those calculations or those operations or the tasks that has to perform, we have to pass the instructions. In order to pass the instructions, we have to use a certain programming language so that it can understand our instructions. So, how many programming languages are there in the programming world? Trust me, if you consider from alphabet A to alphabet Z, you are going to have all the programming languages from A to Z. See, we are having, in simple terms, we are having more than 30 plus programming languages. Trust me, this is an official number. You can actually go out and you can actually search for it in Google and you can find the answer there. So we are having 30 plus programming languages, but in the 30 plus programming languages, only handful of those programming languages got the recognition. So in that, so Java is also one of them. And first, let's understand why we are having Java. So before Java, we have to understand the evolution of programming language. So programming languages, when we are having any programming language, we used to have a C program. So this can be called as an advanced programming language for us because C programming is what has shaped for all the programming languages. We can call this as a great grandfather for us. And the C programming language has some flaws. Yes, you heard it right. So C programming languages is having some flaws. The first main flaw it is having is the platform dependency. What it is? Platform dependency. So that means it cannot run on multiple platforms. For an instance, I had a program and I have run that particular program in my system. And if I try to write the same program, so it is going to provide me a file. If I take the file and if I place it in a different system, it will not work. Basically, it will not work. So this is what platform dependency is. So platform dependency means if you run a certain file in your system, and then if you take the file and if you try to run in another system, it will not run. So this is what platform dependency is. Now you might think, what's wrong with that? That is the biggest drawback that we are ever having in our entire human evolution in this IT industry. Because files has to be transferred, the program has to be transferred. They have to see the file. They must be able to execute that same file in the system as well. That's where the C is getting lagged. And not only that, C usually follows the functional programming language approach. So it follows the functional programming language. So this is the model that C programming language uses. So you might think, what's wrong with it? So that means whatever the application that we are developing, we are going to develop the entire application in one particular file. So when we are developing it in one particular file, it is going to be the heaviest one. Even if any one of the file, like any line, if there is one line breaks, the entire application will break. This is what happens when you are using functional programming language. So it means if you take the file, it has to work independently. You are going to keep all the features inside a single file and you are expecting it to work. That means if any feature failed, then the entire application fails. So these are the two major drawbacks that C is having. And not only that, there are a couple of drawbacks that C language is actually having. And these two are the major one, which Java actually focused to resolve it. So Java, at the time we got Java. So with the help of Java, what they have done is they created something called as JVM. So what is JVM? This is the main brilliancy that exists in Java programming language. So JVM means Java Virtual Machine. And what does it do? So why it is the most crucial part in Java? See, when we are running a particular program, we always run it inside our system or in our computer memory, right? So like how? For an instance, consider this as our CPU, right? So in simple terms, this is our processor, and we are going to have a RAM. And whenever we are trying to compute it, it will always going to compute inside this particular block only. So it is going to have some configurations. So what it is going to have, it is going to have some configurations which are different from the another system. So here Java has looked into this and they thought, why we have to use the system configurations? Why we have to do this? Instead of using the system configurations, what if we create a virtual memory inside the computer memory? So that means you are going to have your RAM. Inside your RAM, you are going to take some memory for Java, and it is going to create a virtual memory here. Again, virtual means which you cannot see it. So I'm just explaining it to you in a simple term so that we can actually understand. It might be a little bit different in the backend processing in a real-time scenario, but let's try to understand it. So here JVM is going to create, so it will use hallucination to create a space inside a RAM, and inside this space we are going to run the Java programs. So whatever the Java programs that we would like to run, we always run it inside the space, inside this virtual memory. That's why JVM is important. Why? Because this virtual memory configurations are constant regardless of what system you are using. Even if you take different systems, in any system, the Java will always create a virtual memory inside it so that the configurations remain constant. So because of this reason, any file which we are sharing from one system to another system can work efficiently without any problems. That is the major advantage of this JVM. And yes, there is a certain working scenarios for this JVM, but yes, JVM plays a crucial role for us. And after this, the second disadvantage is the functional programming, right? So In order to avoid that, so Java has introduced a programming language called as object oriented convenience. We are going to call this as oops, right? So object oriented programming language, or OOP. So why it is more important? So in functional programming language, we said the entire program will be written inside a single file. So when I'm saying entire program, any latest feature will be added in the same file, or any other new updates will be done in the same file. So that means you are making a lot of changes in the same file, and it is making the file heavy and hard to manage for us. So Java is going to avoid that by implementing object-oriented programming methodology. So it is a kind of methodology. So when I'm saying methodology, this is how you are going to write the code in Java. Now, what should you need to have in order to learn? See, first things first, Java is not a easiest language to learn. Trust me, it is not easy, because Java is having a lot of complex syntaxes and complex working behind the scenes. So Java is tough. It is not easy. Okay, so it is not easy to learn. But if you learn this, if you are able to master this, trust me, you are going to be somewhere in your future that is going to appreciate you just because you learn Java, because this is the future. This is not going to be replaced by any programming language. It is going to be there for the next coming 30 to 40 years. Had a great history. I'm not going to discuss about all the timeline and the history. We have already discussed about how exactly Java works, how exactly Java has why exactly Java has introduced, right? And in this video, I'm just going to cover how to write your first program in Java, and what are the things that are needed for us to get Java or to write program in Java. So what are the things that are required for us to learn Java? So first thing is we need softwares. So what softwares do we need? So the first software that we need is we need Java SDK. So we usually call this as software development kit. So why do we need this software? In order to get JVM, we always need to get the Java software development. And the next thing that we need is a good IDE. So we are going to go for VS Code. If you are already having a VS Code, it's good. If not, no worries, we are going to go for it. So what is an IDE? IDE means integrated development environment, and why we are using it? To make our executions much faster. That's it. See, writing code should not be a complex one. It has to be very easy for us. So IDE is going to make our program, it makes our work much easier. So we are not going to do everything from scratch. IDE is going to take care of us, take care of it for us. And here, so first let's download Java. So how to download Java here? So to download Java, all you have to do is you have to go to your browser and just search for download Java for Windows, right? And here you can see these two options. So go for the second option, Oracle Cloud. So the latest version of Java is 25. We are having Windows, Linux, and Mac OS. You can find these three options. So based upon your operating system, you can actually select it. Here I'm actually using Windows, so I'm going to select Windows, and after that I'm going to click on this MSI installer. It is going to install this application. So wait a second. So softwares, so Java, and then so I'm going to install the application. Now as you can see, I'm installing it right now. So once the installation is done, all we have to do is we have to open this. So you can click on this folder icon, or else you can actually double click there itself, and then you have to double click on it. So after double click this particular JDK, so you have to go for next, and then it is going to install this software. And in the meantime, just go back to your browser and also search for download VS Code for Windows. And the moment when you search for VS Code, you are going to get your first link. Just click on it, and after that you are going to see these three options once again. So based upon your operating system, you have to select the icon. See here, you don't have to select the specific options. So you can directly click on this. It will download the .exe file. So again, same thing has to be done here. Select the folder and then just select the location where you want to download, and after that just click on download and it is going to download the application. And the same thing, just open this, and after that just double click on it, and then here I have to just agree to the terms and conditions. Next, so create a desktop icon. So if you select this option, it is going to create a desktop icon on your screen on your desktop, and then next, install, and done. So we have successfully installed Java in our system. We are good to go. And if you look at the VS Code, it is also going uh, almost half of this installation is completed. So I'm going to skip the installation part for you here, and then we can directly go into this VS Code part. So this is how you are going to set up the. So once installation is done, this is how it's going to look like, and then finish. And now you have successfully installed the VS Code in your system. And if you just go back and if you just search for VS Code, you can actually see the VS Code icon here. This is how you are going to get your VS Code once you install it. And here you have to select two options. So the first option is go to file, and here you can find an auto save, right? Is activated. So if not, then just select this. Then the VS Code is going to take care of your saving automatically. And after this, you have to look at these options. So these are all the options that you will get. So this is an explorer where you can find your project, the entire project, Java projects and Java files inside this one. And here you are going to have a search where you can search for a certain words, and if you want to replace, you can replace them. And here it is for Git, and this is for run and debug, where you can actually run your code and you can actually debug it. So basically, in simple terms, you are going to run your Java file. And here in extensions, so here you have to use extensions in order to make your VS Code much smarter to use. So the first thing that we have to search is Java, because we have to make this VS Code is compatible for Java. We are going to search for Java, and here you are having this Java option, right? Just install this. So just install this particular extension. It is going to install some of the options, and after that you also need to install this prettier ESLint. It is going to provide a certain format. It will make our program much, like, the way we are writing much easier. Okay, so that's what we have to do, and that is the only extension we have to use. And after this, what should we do? So after installing this extension, all we have to do is so once the installation is done, you have to go to file and you have to select a folder. So why we have to select a folder? We usually call this as the workspace. So what is a workspace? Workspace is a location where you are going to specifically work on a certain program or a certain project. So here I'm going to create a workspace for us. So the workspace is binary devs trainings, and inside this I'm going to create a folder, or this is going to be a workspace that which we are going to work on this Java. For this entire Java tutorial, we are going to use the same workspace. Okay, so this folder, I need to give a proper folder for this. So let's say I'm going to take Java training workspace, and here I'm going to select this folder. So by doing this, it is going to open a certain, right? So this is how it's going to look like. It is going to select your workspace. And how do we know that it selected the same workspace? If you go to Explorer, or if you click on this Explorer, here you can find open editors. And after the open editors, you have to make sure that your name or your folder name is the same as the workspace name. So this is where you can see the workspace name. Okay, and so the folder name has to match with the folder that you just selected. So if this both the names are matching, that means this is where you can actually write the code in. Now here you can find two options, right? So basically we are having four options, but we use these two options more frequently. So the first option is to create folder, and the second option is to create a new file. So if I click on this, it will create something like this. So here we have to give the folder names. If you are not giving any folder name, then it is not going to create a folder. So let me create a folder here, and let's say introduction. And inside this, I'm going to create a file. But the problem is, what file do I need to create right now? I was looking to create a Java file. And how can we create a file? See here, whenever you are trying to create a Java file, so we have to use the following syntax. So what is the syntax that we have to use? Now, by the way, all of a sudden I just bring up a certain new word, right? So that is syntax. So what exactly a syntax is? Syntax is nothing but a rule. When we are learning a grammar, we used to have this structure, right? So that is what syntax is. Syntax is a grammatical structure for Java. So what is the syntax that we have to follow when we are creating a file? So whenever you want to create a file, you have to give the file name, and after that you have to give dot java. Now the problem is, file name is fine for us, then what about this dot java? So what exactly this dot java is now? So let's understand this in much deeper here. So dot java is actually called as an extension. So what is an extension? See, we had heard this certain term from a long time. So this is an extension for that, that is an extension for this, that this. So we had a lots of explanations has been done, and we have heard these terms a lot of times right now. So what exactly an extension? So extension helps us, like not us. So extensions is going to help the system or the PC or the mobile to identify. So what it is going to identify here? It is going to identify which application, which app should it has to use to open it. See, whenever, for an example, see, in our mobile phone we used to have photos, right? The photos will always have the jpg. This is going to be the most common extension for photos. So if I ever click on this photo, it will always suggest to open a Google Photos or an image gallery. That's what it is going to ask for us. And same goes for videos. If we go for .mp4, it will always suggest, like it will always ask us to which video player it has to open. The question is, how does our mobile phone or else our laptop know that which application it has to suggest when it is trying to open this application? Because of the extension. So here, when we are stating .java, system will understand, okay, this is a Java file. This is not an ordinary file. This is a Java file which we have to take care of. Now, here to give a file name, again, we are having some rules which we have to follow. So what are the rules we have to follow here? So the first rule that we have to follow is when no space between words. So for an instance, if I want to create a file, so imagine I'm creating my first file and I want to name it as a first file. So here I'm having two words, first and the file. Now if I am trying to create this, so usually how we do that? So first, and after giving some space, we are going to say first file dot java, right? So we had a space here. So this is incorrect. We shouldn't do something like this. So instead of that, what should we do is first file dot java. We should not give a space. So if we don't give a space, it might create confusions. Like when I say confusions, it is not easy for us to read, right? So here, to create this kind of scenarios, we had something called as naming conventions. So this is why we are using naming conventions. So why we are using them? To make our words more reasonable. So here we are having three types of cases which are supported in Java. So the first one is camel case, camel case. And the second one is Pascal case. So what is a Pascal case? We will discuss about it. And the last one is snake case. So these are the three types of case notations which are supported in Java. Not only in Java, most of the programming languages support these case notations. Even if you take Python, JavaScript, or any other programming language, these are the most common programming languages that if you take any programming language, these are the common conventions that we can see in any programming language. So the first one is camel case. So if you are writing something in camel case, so you have to make sure the first character of the first word or the entire first word should be in a lowercase, and then the first character of the second word has to be in uppercase, and the remaining or the rest of the letters should be in lowercase, and then we have to use dot java. So because of this certain reason, you can clearly see that. So here we are having the first file, and it is much readable, right? Same goes with Pascal case. So if it is a Pascal case, then you have to use first file dot java. But when it comes to snake case, it's a quite different for us. So first you are going to use underscore, and you can go with file, and then you can say java. This is what we can do, right? So this is how the naming conventions works. Not only while you are creating programming files, but also we are going to use this case notations. Yes, the another name for them is case notations. We can also use this case notations in the program as well. So we will see in the next upcoming videos. But right now, this is how you can create a file with this naming convention. So now let's go back to our VS Code. Here, let's create our very first file. And how to create it? So here you can clearly see an icon here, right? So if you click on this, it will ask you to create a file. So here I'm going to use first file dot java. Now, as you can see, the moment when I use extension dot java, it provided an icon. So why it is happening? It is simply because of VS Code. Yeah, it is not a big deal for us. Like VS Code is actually flexing here because. So we got our very first file. Okay, fine. Now the problem is how we can actually write the code. So we have to write the code, right? So at least how can we do that? So the thing is, as I mentioned previously, in Java, everything is written, or the entire program file is in form of. In Java, we always write program in object-oriented programming format, right? OOP. So OOP is having a strict rule that all the program must and should write inside a class. Now the problem is, in a project we are going to have n number of class files. That means not as 1, 2, or 3. You can have more than 10 or 20 or 30. It can be 100. So when you are having that many class files, how can I know? So when I say how can I, so how can a system know that it has to run this particular class file first? So it has to provide an order, right? So how can we do that? So to do it, we are going to use something called as main method. Now, I'm not going to explain you in depth about how we are writing the class and why we are writing main method in a certain way. There is a certain approach for that. So for now, let's look at the syntax when you are writing a program in Java. So whenever you want to write a program, you always need to write a class, and then you have to give a class name to it, and after this you have to take the curly brace. Now curly brace plays a major role in this programming language. Why? Because this curly braces acts like boundaries. Now this class is having boundary range from here till here. That's what it suggested. So that's what curly braces suggests to us. Now here we are going to write our main method in this. So you are going to have main method inside the class itself. Let's have a look example. Let's have an example here. Let's look at an example. Now let's say class, and after stating class, we have to give the class name. So the class name is going to be first program, and after that we have to use the curly braces, right? That's it. You have written your first class file. But yes, there are some errors. I mean, let's see. We need a main method, right? So here, what I'm going to do is I will say void main string ARGS. So is it really necessary for us to write like this? The answer is yes, it is. Now, we got our very first program file here. So what are we having? We are having our very first program file. So this is a class file, and this is our first program. And now what I want to do is I want to print something. The question is, where am I trying to print it? Inside my system, right? The question is, I cannot print inside the VS Code. Then how can I print something? So where can I print it? That's the two possible questions that we can get. So in order to print this, first we have to understand where we can actually print it. So the first thing is we can actually use files to print our data. And the second thing is we can even use our command prompt. So we can go to command prompt, there we can see the data. In simple terms, we call it as a terminal. So inside terminal, we can see the output. Now, the thing is, here we are not discussing about files right now. So our go-to option is terminal, but how can I see the data in terminal? I need something, right? Right. This is where the psychology plays the major role. See, consider Java like a small kid, okay? So imagine if there is a 5 years old kid. How are you going to pass the instructions? You are going to say it everything step by step, right? So first you have to do this, second you have to do this, third you have to do this. Likewise, you have to treat Java. So for Java, you have to pass everything in detail. So here, right now, my intention is to print something in terminal, right? So print something in terminal. Now, how can we do that? Here we are having an option. So I'm asking to print. Okay. So we need print. So to print this in Java, we are having a function of print. But the problem is, where do I want to print this? That's what we have to do. So for this, we have to use system dot out dot print, and then whatever the content that you want to print, you are going to write inside this. So system dot print, and then the content that you want to print. Now this is what is going to happen. So the system, so I'm asking it to print inside the system, and I want it as an output. How do I want it? How do I want it as an output? By printing it. So this is what an instruction looks like. This is an instruction. I'm passing an instruction. And the good thing is we should not worry about how exactly it is working behind the scenes, because this particular feature was already been developed by the Java development team, and they have deployed it and they have run it, and it is a most common point for us to look. So it is the most common point for us to look and try it out. So here, all you have to do is you have to use system dot out dot print, and then at the end you have to use a semicolon. This is what we have to do for every Java line. If you think the line was ended, so that's just like how we use full stop to stop or to mention that the sentence was completed. So likewise, if you think a line is completed, we have to use a semicolon. And inside this, you can write anything. For an instance, I'm writing 23. Okay. And right now I want to run this file. And how can we run this? Simply go to run. And if you click on start debugging, it is going to ask you for two options. So here I just need to select Java. And the moment when I select Java here, it is going to run Java, and okay, it is asking me to install something. So we have to install this. Okay, so reload the window. I have to reload the entire window. This is taking a bit longer. Okay, now, so the moment when you completed, once you complete writing this, you have to go to run and you have to say start debugging. And then you have to select the option Java Plus. And then it is going to show this option. Right now, if you think how you can actually find out whether your file is running or not, you can actually find an option like this. So if you are able to see these icons, so that means your application is running right now. So what's happening behind the scenes? So behind the scenes, so how can I run this program? So to run this program, you have to go to terminal. Just open a new terminal. So when you open the terminal, this is how it's going to look like. So what is a terminal, by the way? It's a command prompt. So here you have to make sure in terminal you are having the CMD. Okay. So after this, what should we do? So we have to make sure that we are inside the folder. So right now, as you can see, I'm inside Java training workspace, right? As you can see, this is what it is suggesting. I'm inside Java training workspace. Now, in order to run my Java file, I have to go to the introduction part. And how can we do this? By moving to the introduction folder, I can actually get access to the Java file. But the problem is, how can I move from one folder to another folder? So here we have to use commands. So what we have to use, we have to commands. So those are called as terminal commands. We have to use terminal commands to work with them. We have to use terminal commands to access the files or to move between the folders to perform some operations. So here, my intention is to move from one folder to another folder. So in order to do that, so we have to use cd space and whatever the file name that you are having, the folder name, you have to select the particular folder. And as you can see, now I moved from this Java training workspace to introduction. And here you just have to run a command. So Java space first, again, you need not have to type everything from the scratch. Just give tab. And by doing this, you can clearly see that in our terminal, we are having 23. So congratulations, you have completed your first Java program. If you really like the video, make sure that you are visiting to our channel and also go through the remaining videos as well. And also we are going to upload the rest of the videos as well. And if you don't want to miss them, make sure that you are going to subscribe to the channel and also press the bell icon so that you don't have to miss any updates related to the course or any new courses that which we are going to launch. And once again, thanks for your support, and I wish that you are going to continue your support for us. Have a great day.